Hello everybody, Kyle here. I'm going to talk about The Marvels. This is going to be my review of the film. I saw it twice. Um, and I really enjoyed this film. I thought that the villain Dar-Benn, played by Zaw Ashton, I found her to be the weakest element of the movie. I think for me, when you look at the MCU and you look at the number of villains, I'm actually someone against the idea of the MCU having weak villains. I think they have way more captivating villains than weak ones. I would say they probably have like 4 really weak villains, like main villains. Because of course there have been like side characters that are kind of weak, like if you look at Sonny Birch and Ant-Man and the Wasp. But like I would say that most of the main villains have been pretty good in the MCU, except for, like, you could say Malekith, you could say Ronan the Accuser, and, I mean, I love a number of the villains that I think some other people don't really care for. Like, it was funny to me, like, a lot of people didn't care for Jeff Bridges in Iron Man 1. He's one of my favorite villains as Obadiah Stane. And Ghost was a villain I was a little bit iffy on when I first watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, but she's kind of grown on me through the rewatches. But I would say that, like, Dar-Benn is one of the weakest ones, because for me the problem with her as a character is that we don't really get much of her, like, on her own, or her kind of having her own, like, journey as a character, because all she's doing is going after Carol and the worlds that she calls home, which is a little strange to me because Tarnax just has a bunch of Skrulls on it. We don't really get a sense of, like, why is that a world that Carol calls home. But it's a little weird to me because this is a character I think maybe if they chose to focus the film, maybe even begin the film on the destruction of Hala through Dar-Benn's point of view, maybe that would have worked better. But to have like a flashback, it does not really get me interested in this character. They don't really do anything with her, especially the way they end her character. It's, in my eyes, kind of anticlimactic, because really, by the end of her journey, she doesn't really have anything that interesting to do aside from fighting Carol, Monica, and Kamala. I think to some of the other villains that I really love, like, say, a Thanos, or, I mean, even Namor in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, like, there's just more to those characters. Like, even Hela from Thor Ragnarok, it just, I don't know, something about Dar-Benn, I really wish they gave Zaw Ashton a better script for that character. Because I think she was great. Like, she, I think, gave her best of what she could. I also think if I have, like, one other negative or so of this film, I do think that some of the stuff with, like, Carol and Monica, they could have fleshed out a bit more. Having one conversation in the film about, you know, why Carol didn't see Monica for all these years felt kind of quick, and the way they resolved it was so fast. It was like, I didn't exactly buy it. But I mean, if those are like my only negatives of this film, I do think it's a pretty good movie, because as we know in the plot in the trailers, it's all about how Carol, Kamala Khan, and Monica Rambeau have now essentially been entangled with their powers, and they are connected, and whenever one uses their powers, they switch into the other character. Or wherever the other character was. So if, like, Captain Marvel's in the sky and she uses her powers, then Miss Marvel, Kamala, is in the sky and then she's falling. So I think that was a really creative way to use these characters because I think it bonds them in a really interesting way. You really get a sense of who each of them are in this movie. You get a sense of um kind of like more so like a sisterly bond as I see it, where they all need each other for their own reasons. Captain Marvel's has had all of her problems, especially in the first film, but then Monica with the death of her mother, in WandaVision, and with the separation between her and Carol, she needed more of a connection there. And then you have Kamala, who really, um, I think, needs these role models in her life because she's becoming this young superhero that it's really fun to see how they depict her relationship with, you know, Carol Danvers, with Captain Marvel, her idol, because like there's this one great line in the film where she says, "Now I'm gonna actually, I should treat you like a real person," and it's like, I mean, we can think of just the actors that play these roles. A number of these actors, like Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., they play these roles for so many years that they now are these characters. And I bet they feel, sometimes uncomfortable going out in public. Scarlett Johansson, Elizabeth Olsen, and all these people will see them, and it's like, oh, you're supposed to be this character, but they're not that character. They're an actor playing the role. And with Captain Marvel, to Kamala, she's this, the greatest superhero ever. And I love there's this one scene in the movie where she does something that in Kamala's mind, she wouldn't think Carol to do. In one of the scenes where they have to save a bunch of Skrulls, and like the beginning of the film focuses on Kamala thinking of like all these fantasies, these fan fictions of her working with Captain Marvel and everything going perfectly right and everything, being just this perfect, superhero escapade. But then when she actually has to fight and go into a situation like that, it's very different than she expected. And she is kind of like, essentially, she's stunned, she's like, wait, this isn't how I thought it would go. This isn't how I thought Carol Danvers would react towards me. So I think that's really good. And I love how, like, you see Captain Marvel really react towards Kamala as, like, her being this role model to this young girl. And that's something that, we didn't quite see in the other films, in like, say, Spider-Man Homecoming, like with Iron Man and Peter. I like how we're starting to see these now we're starting to see this with like Hawkeye. We're starting to see this with the Marvels, where what does it mean, like what is the impact of these characters, like of their actions, who are they affecting? And you're seeing whether it's Kate Bishop and Hawkeye looking up at Hawkeye and being like, oh wow, I want to be just like him, and now Kamala being like, I want to be just like Captain Marvel. And it's fun to see these heroes now seeing their effect on the young voices. Now, I will say, and a lot of people probably will laugh at this, but they did a great job with this, I think, or at least they tried to do a really good job with this in the X-Men films, with Mystique, Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, and how she was seen as this, mutant that is essentially the mutant that everyone wants to strive to be. And she became a role model to other mutants. And I think that this is one of those where they are, I think, tapping into a similar type of story with these young heroes. But it's something kind of, I would say, new in comic book movies, because now we're getting to the point where we're getting a second generation of heroes. And I think that's really cool. So we're also seeing that with Miles Morales, and in the Into the Spider-Verse film. So that's a really cool new direction we're starting to see. Um, what else? I really love the action in the film and the way it was shot, and like there is one of my favorite sequences. In fact, one of my favorite action sequences of the year is when the women get entangled for the first time, and we get to see like essentially every single person in these scenes has something to do. Not even just the Marvels themselves, but Fury, Kamala's parents, Goose, like they all are fighting in this action sequence, and it's really exciting. It's beautifully, played against this great song by I think Skrillex, and it's just a really, you know, blast, just a joyous scene to watch, and it really sets you up for what you're about to watch, because they go to different planets, and one of the planets they go to is a musical planet, and I don't really understand why they hid this from the trailers and from the marketing, because I do think if they showed this in like the trailers, it would have interested more folks, because I think it's a really cool planet. I love how like basically what it is all of the people on this planet, their language is song, so they cannot understand you if you do not sing. And I mean it's such a great and creative scene. It's something that I think a lot of comic books, you would find in a lot of comic books today. And I think that unfortunately, as I've seen in a number of reviews for this film, that's not going so well over with. That's not, I don't know how to say the word, but that's not going well when it comes to some people's reactions, because some people don't like that, and that's fine. Like you don't have to like everything. Film is subjective and everything, but there are people going out of their way to say that this isn't a comic book movie. This is a movie for girls, and it's like it's just ridiculous, because if you read any comic book written today, especially any comic book written today about these characters, you would find scenes just like this in these comics. And for people to just judge these movies now because the people on screen don't look like them, don't have the same gender as them, and to criticize those movies because of that, it's just utterly ridiculous. And I think like you can be critical of a film, but you don't have to be critical to the point where you're just seeming like a jerk, because all of a sudden I'm seeing people say that, oh, we can't have these women in these movies. We can't have all of these superhero movies where it's, according to them, woke. And it's like, I don't think you even know what it means. Like, I don't think you know any of the words that are coming out of your mouth. So, it is a shame, but back to the movie, I will say that I loved the performances of all the actors, especially Iman Vellani, because I think Iman Vellani has the hardest task in this film, in not only it being her first major movie. In fact, I think she's only done short films aside from Miss Marvel. So she has like no film experience for like feature films, and she just knocks it out of the park. She steals the show. And I think that's also hard for her, because this character of Kamala has to really, touch the hearts of the audience, because if she doesn't do that, I think the film falls apart. The point of Kamala Khan in this movie is that she is showing, Captain Marvel, she's showing these other characters that there's a next generation of heroes that is the future of the MCU. And she is showing them that they, what they do, what Captain Marvel does, is something that they look up to. They aspire to be Captain Marvel. And it affects her. Like, she's afraid in this movie to be seen as something she isn't, or to be viewed as something that will make people afraid of her. As she's called on Hala by the Kree, she's called the Annihilator. And I do wish they went a little bit more into that. It's interesting that she basically destroys this entire world by destroying the Supreme Intelligence, and they didn't really go into that even deeper. I guess they may have been afraid to push it given the movie it is. It's very fun, it's very enjoyable. Some of the hard-hitting questions might be a little bit too, too deep for them to go into for this type of film, but I do wish we got a little bit more of, the negative results of her actions and her having to deal with it, because the way they resolve it at the end, once again, feels a little bit anticlimactic. It feels like, oh wait, why didn't you just do that from the beginning? But it's still, like, for me, like, the performances, going back to Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, I think this is my favorite performance of hers. I've loved her in all the Captain Marvel appearances, but, like, there's something about this performance here where it feels like Brie's really, really comfortable in this role now. She's, and I think the first Captain Marvel and even Endgame, she was trying to figure out, how to play this character. And I think in a similar way to Chris Evans in Captain America the Winter Soldier, I think that it took her like 2 times to really, really nail this character and say to herself, this is Carol Danvers. And I love that because it shows you growth. It shows you a character that isn't just one-dimensional, the same every time you see her. And I think there's, I personally want to see more of Captain Marvel. I want to see where her story goes. So, hopefully we will see her again. Hopefully we see another movie, but I don't think we will. I don't think they'll make another Captain Marvel at this point because it's just a mess in terms of how many Marvel movies they need to make in the next number of years, and how this movie might not perform that well, so they might, decide not to make more. So it's just frustrating. I wish that, I could watch 10 more of these movies because this cast is just so much fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really a blast, especially when it's focusing on these 3 women. Teyonah Parris is just wonderful as Monica Rambeau, and I just really love that she feels like such a perfect evolution of the girl from the first Captain Marvel. I don't know the actress's name, but it's like the same character, and you can tell, and I love it. But yeah, so I would probably give this movie, it's around a 7.5 to 8 for me. I'm still, debating about it, and I wouldn't say it's, by far one of my favorite Marvel movies, but I don't think it's one of the worst ones, because I think there's been a number of others that just weren't as good, and just weren't as fun, because this one really, take away like the villain aspect and everything, you can sit and watch this movie and you will have a blast. And it's something that I think a lot of the reviews for The Flash were telling all of us that we would have. And then I sat and watched The Flash. I'm like, I'm not having a blast with this. So, yeah. Anyway, check out The Marvels. If you want to see, a bunch of 3 badass women kicking ass. And yeah, I'm telling you, Iman Vellani is the future of the MCU. She is going many places. So, okay, guys, take care. Bye.